Hello and welcome to little Hades Girl Home video. He was with us as well as his sister for a 2-week board and train. They mostly just focused on puppy basics, but with an emphasis on the obedience aspect. I try to start out with something fun, so here he is playing, his absolute favorite thing ever. He actually works pretty well for play too. So sometimes instead of giving treats, you can offer play after he's done some obedience work for you. This is called a flirt pole, and he really, really likes it. It's like fishing for a Hades. So here we have some actual obedience. That was a sit with just a little bit of a hand gesture. And then he usually slides into a down afterwards, so I stopped paying him attention because I asked for a sit, not for a down. There was a touch, so he's just touching his nose to the palm of my hand. I just say the word touch and hold out my hand, and he gives me that boop with his muzzle, and he gets a treat for that. There was a sit, and I made sure to reward very high so that he knows that a sit gives a high reward so that he's not tempted to down when I ask him to sit, which can be a problem because, as you can see, he very much loves laying down. I asked for a touch. He gives me a little bit of sass, so I just wait him out. And he gives me what I want, so he gets the treat. I asked him for a down, so as he slid into the down, I gave him a treat for that. He finishes chewing his treat and goes into the place command that I asked him for. So his place command is an implied stay, whereas his sit and down are not an implied stay. But place means hop up onto this raised cot and stay there until I tell you your free word, which is free, and then he can be released when I say that word. So we worked on adding some distance, some duration, just a little bit of distractions. So you see he got off right there, which he's a puppy. He has a pretty short attention span, but he got off. I grabbed him gently by the collar and led him back on and said, no, place, just to remind him what he was doing. And I'm rewarding throughout this whole video. So that was a hard one for him. I dropped a toy on the ground and he was not able to stay on the place bed. His temptations took over him. But then I tried it again, and he succeeded the second time, so he got plenty of treats for that. Then I try another toy, and you see I put multiple treats on the bed because as I up the distraction level, I have to up the motivation level for him to stay on that bed. I also dropped food on the floor, and he did not go for it, so, reward heavily for that because what's the point if he doesn't get rewarded, for leaving the food. And then here I reward him with play, so he's allowed to play with those toys after I free him that I was previously asking for him to ignore. It's very hard for puppies to sit still, so rewarding with something like play afterwards can do wonders for them and keep their spirits up even while they're doing, obedience or stuff that they don't necessarily enjoy doing so much. That was a sit with food lure. So I had the food in my hand. I put it in front of his nose. He followed the food into a position where his head goes up and his butt goes down. That was a food lure with a down. So I bring the food towards the ground and his whole body goes downwards. But he can also do a verbal down. You just say it. He doesn't need much of a physical cue for that. So I gave him a stay, and we're just doing duration right now. So then I reward him for his duration during the stay, You saw that for this day I gave him like a stop hand out in front of me. And that kind of tells him, stay where you are. You know, no matter if I walk around or what I do, I'll come back to you and reward you for your hard work of staying in one spot, which is very hard for him to do. And I do remind him a couple times. So every time after I feed him, I do say stay again, and I give him that hand cue because he's a puppy and I don't want him to start to learn that me giving him that reward or treat is his cue to get up and walk away. His cue to get up and walk away is only free. Sometimes he takes a while to chew. There you go. And then I give him the free command. I add a little bit of movement when I say free so that he knows, hey, we're getting up and doing something now. And you'll see I reward him with play here too. Because after sitting still for so long, you know, you want to get them excited. You want to reward them for keeping their attention in one place for so long. So I know you guys have your other dog sit and wait for you to put the bowl down. I didn't work on that very much during their stay because as soon as they went in their crates, I wanted to reward them for going into their crates. But here's how you would do it. You would just pull the bowl away and stand straight every time they make a move towards that bowl. It takes some repetition, but after a while they start to learn that if they go for the bowl, they do not get the bowl. Here we are doing a nail trim. He was pretty good for nail trims, honestly. For puppies, I generally put them between my legs so that, you know, I'm holding them securely so they can't wiggle around or hurt themselves. And they typically stay pretty calm this way as well. And I am dremeling his nails. I did clip them as well. I just like to do both because I'm not sure what the owners will do in the future. So I trained them by doing both, and I probably did his nails about 4 times while he was here. Not that he needed it, but just to kind of get him used to it. So then for the back nails, I kind of put him in a similar position, but he's facing away from me. And then I just do his back nails. And you can see he's a little wiggly for the back ones. Probably because he can't see me and he wants to see me and be close to me, but after a minute, he does settle down. I verbally praise him during the nail trim, and then afterwards, I give him a bunch of treats. This is just luring with some food to do a spin. And then he lays down to eat his treat because he's a little lazy boy. And then I do some recall with him, which is not necessarily a recall. It's just his name, and I say it in a very fun, happy manner to get his name recognition going so that, you know, when you say his name, he will enthusiastically look towards you. Here's his kennel command. You say kennel, you point to where he needs to go. He goes in, I close the door. I also reward him sometimes while he's in there, so that being in the kennel is the better part of this activity rather than being out. I don't want to, you know, start playing with him outside of the kennel and then ask him to go in, and then the inside is super boring. So I try to make the inside just as rewarding, if not more rewarding, than being outside of the kennel. This is sped up. I think I left him for 2 minutes, and he doesn't whine or cry or anything. He got much better about not whining and crying the longer he was with me, but of course he's got a lot of husky in him, so he's probably going to be vocal for most of his life. But hopefully he will mature and grow out of it a little bit. But the best way to deal with the vocalization is to completely ignore it. And then reward when they are being quiet. So there he was not taking the treats anymore because they were not high enough value for him to continue going into the crate, because he just wanted to be outside of the crate, because earlier we were having fun and playing on the floor with toys. So I upped the reward value by getting peanut butter, and so then he goes into his kennel when I ask, because he knows that he's going to get peanut butter for it. So I just upped the reward value just a little bit to keep getting him to do, what I would like him to do in this moment. And he is supposed to wait until I say the word free to come out of his kennel. He did have some trouble learning this because he loves to keep moving and playing and sniffing and exploring. And so being in the kennel means he can't do any of that. So I really had to convince him at first that he wanted to go into the kennel to get that treat. Nope. Here's some loose leash walking. He's just a puppy, so basically I just walk with him. I let him go wherever he'd like, usually instead of, in front of my feet. I don't like that so much because I could trip or he could get hurt. So I try to keep him on the sides of me, but with a nice loose leash, and I just reward him every time he is in the correct position or when he checks in with me. So when he gives me eye contact or peeks up at me while he's walking, I give him a treat for that. That helps teach him that this is our walk together, not just his walk, and he can't pull to where he wants to go. He has to ask politely or at least keep a loose leash and go in that direction, and then we can go that direction. If he pulls, we completely stop walking, and he has to come back to me on his own before we can start walking again.
Good. Yes.
So I reward him right next to me because I want to reward him where I want him to be. So if I reward him next to me, he's more likely to stay there so that he keeps getting rewarded in that same spot.
Tired? Good, yes.
He's also a little tired in this clip, so he's lagging behind a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah,
that was also a very good stop when I stopped. So I didn't cue him to sit or stop with me or anything, but I rewarded pretty heavily for it because I really liked that behavior. He offered that, and so I captured it and rewarded him for doing that.
Good boy.
So there he pulled on the leash. We stopped walking. I gave him just a little bit of leash pressure towards me. He took that and walked towards me, and then we can continue forward. But it's important to maintain a nice loose leash, whether we're on the road or off the road. So that's why I go into the grass sometimes. And I really love how frequently he checks in with me throughout the walk. This also kind of teaches him that, despite all of the distractions and the environment, you are the most important thing to him at that moment. Which you should be the most important thing to your dog. We're just doing a little bit of off-leash work and recalls in the front yard. And trying to get him to sit down. He's more likely to sit outside. It takes just a little bit of time to get him to down, but if you keep working on it, it shouldn't be a problem at all. I just think he doesn't like the texture of the ground. He'd prefer to lay down inside.
Good boy.
Here are some door manners. So I open the door. He does not bolt out. He is in a sit. I give him a treat for waiting and not bolting out of the door. But you don't necessarily need to do that. His reward can be going through the door and then going on a walk. So then this time I do give him his release word, which is free, and we are able to walk through the door in a nice controlled manner. Here are some clips of his bath. And mostly he just wanted to drink the water, which I don't mind unless it has soap in it. So I'm trying to get him to not lick the water off of the deck. But he really did very good for all of his baths. He's a little wiggly sometimes, but I try to make baths really enjoyable if I can for the dog. So lots of stretches, lots of pets, lots of praise. You know, if I need to give treats throughout, I do that. But he was a very, very, very good boy for his baths. He even let me wash his face. And this one was just cute. But overall, he really was just a really good but very playful boy. Sometimes he had his own agenda, which I liked a little bit of willfulness in a dog, you know, so I enjoyed working with him. He started off really, really wanting to learn, and then he ended our stay by really, really wanting to just play all the time, which is totally fine and expected from a puppy. So I hope as he got home, you know, he was able to do a bunch of playing and resting, and that he keeps his obedience on him. And I'm sure you guys will do a great job of working with him and continuing onward with his education. So bring him back to me at some point. I would love to see him. But thank you so much for trusting me with working with him. He was a pleasure.